Hey guys, this is Simon with Caddis Fly Shop and Oregon Fly Fishing Blog, and today I'm going to be tying up a Skwala for you guys. We're going to call it the Skwopper because it can double as a hopper in the fall. This is a big deal. Once you head a little more east in the valley, we have some Skwalas, but not a whole lot. There's a big hatch on the Yuba in Northern California. Once you get over by Bend, the Deschutes in the Owyhee gets a big Skwala hatch. The Bitterroot in Montana gets one, kind of all over the West. It's kind of a big deal, but in the Valley, we get some, but it's not as big of a deal. So it's a really big spring hatch. It's the first larger bug that fish kind of go crazy for, so it's a good one, and this will double as a fall hopper in your box if you don't use them all up this spring. So I'll show you how to tie it. So looking at this fly, this is using, the big deal here is this new foam from Hairline. This is the high float foam from Hairline, and it is full of little air pockets. It's kind of hard to see on the camera, and it's also stretchier, and it has what's called a higher durometer, so it's much more durable. It can be stretched and pulled, and I'm using nano silk on this, which cuts through anything, and it does not cut through this, so this foam is really cool. This has hackle, so it's a high floating bug. This little bit on the back is an egg sac. That's what this stoneflies look like when they're laying eggs, when they're ovipositing. But it's a pretty simple fly. It floats high. If you need it to float lower, you can clip off the bottom to have it float low. But this is a great Skwala pattern for the spring. You can tag small nymphs below it. It's buoyant enough. It has a big gap, which the foam doesn't get in the way. And like I said, this doubles as a great hopper in the fall. So it's one that can kind of be used most of the summer trout season. So I will get to it and show you guys exactly how I do it. It's a pretty quick and easy tie. So this is a 570 number 8 from Ahrex, which is the long dry fly hook from Ahrex. I particularly like it for foam bugs because it kind of has a wide gap, which I'll be doing a salmon fly also today, which you guys will probably have seen because I think we're going to post it first. Which it has a very large gap, which foam can kind of get in the way of that stuff, so having that big gap is really helpful. This is a also very stout hook, as most of the Ahrex hooks are, so it's really great for larger fish, and fish can hit squalas as well as hoppers pretty aggressively when they're keyed in on them, so having a big hook can help when that big fish comes up to eat your fly. We choose barbed because it's nice to put a dropper on the back, but you can always mash it down, or all Ahrex hooks come in a barbless option. It would probably be called 571. And so this is Semperfli Nano Silk in olive 50 denier, and this hook is a size 8 of the 570. And what I'm going to use now is this is a mix of Senyo's Fusion Dub from Hairline as well as Peacock Ice Dub for the little egg sac on the back. This isn't really, necessary as much as it's kind of a little attractor spot. A lot of times when fish are feeding on stoneflies, they're actually feeding on the females that are ovipositing or laying eggs in the tail outs of runs. And so, giving the fly something suggestive of a insect doing that can be helpful. But you kind of want to do a tight dubbing ball of this stuff just like this, and it'll help kind of bump the end up too. Doesn't need to be huge, but if you've ever seen one of these insects with the egg sac, it's actually pretty crazy. It's got like a blue hue to it, and it's very dark in color. It looks pretty crazy. But we're going to put a little egg sac on the back here. If there's a lot of loose ends here, we can trim them off. But it doesn't really matter. It's going to get chewed up anyways when you fish it. So we have that. So next, this is this new foam I was talking about from Hairline. This is a big deal. This is like the stuff MFC's been using for their new chubbies. This is the high float foam. It has got all these little bubbles on it, as you can see, and it has a very high durometer, like I said, which is the terms I learned from Hairline, which means it stretches and it doesn't tear easy either. So it's very strong. So you can really crank down on it and not worry about it totally, tearing through. So we're going to take a small piece of it, about the width of how we want to end this, and I would say maybe that's about the width of the gap of the hook is a good way to measure for you guys. I didn't pre-measure it, but we're going to want to butt this right up against the that little egg sac back there. And we are going to put in a little bit of dubbing right now towards the back. And this dubbing is microfine dub from Hairline in 2 colors mixed. The one color is sulfur yellow, and the other color is blue wing olive, BWO gray olive. And that kind of gives it a nice Skwala belly color, which is kind of a yellowish green color on their belly, and it's lighter. So that's why we do that like that, because that's what we want to kind of emulate. And so what we're going to put in here, and you can certainly tie this without this, but for a high floating bug, you're going to want to tie in a piece of grizzly green or grizzly olive hackle. I'm using one from Whiting. Standard olive would work fine. Something maybe yellowish would work okay if you have like a pale yellow, or maybe like a ginger. Basically, you just want to kind of have a light underbelly, because those Skwalas have a seriously light underbelly. And when you think of a hopper too, hoppers kind of have a light underbelly. And what I'm putting on my fingers right here, here's a little tip for you guys, is this Overton's Wonder Wax is really great for getting a really tight dubbing noodle. The stuff just like locks all the dubbing together, and it works really, really good. I've been using it like nonstop. I cannot get enough of it. So what we're going to do here is we're going to wrap the body up until where we're going to do the wing. So you want to leave yourself enough space where you can put in hair for a wing and legs comfortably without being cramped. So I get pretty tight with it. Your first one, you might not want to go as close, but you can get pretty close with it. And we're going to want to fill this body up enough. Part of the reason I chose this olive thread is because I can wrap back over this body right here and not have it show. So what we're going to do here with this hackle is we're going to wrap it. And you can do it really tight and it floats higher, or you can do more spaces and it will not float quite as high. This also, if you don't wrap it too tight, it makes the body look like it's segmented, kind of like a natural bug. So we're going to do this just like that. We're going to tie that in, and then we will pull the back over like this. And like I said, this stuff can stretch, pull, twist. You can crank down on it with the with this Semperfly Nano Silk, or if you're using GSP from Vivus, that would work too. It's something that's just really strong. And it's pretty surprising because other foam would probably have busted by this point. So what we're going to do is take these wraps all the way to the front right here, and just kind of clamp down on this as hard as we can and just compress it. And that's how we are going to make this part right here. And now all we have to do is put on the wing, a little bit of dubbing in the legs, and we're done. And so for the wing, I'm using some olive dyed deer hair, something like this. You don't need a whole lot. You have a little bit of space to work, so don't overdo it with how much hair you're putting in. And then the leg we're putting in is this Bard Sexy Floss in small olive from MFC. And so it comes in a bag, and it is looped over itself like this. And for this specific fly, if you take one strand from the half point, that's long enough to do both legs. So you can kind of conserve your materials like that. What we're going to do is tie, you can see one end flares out. You're going to want the end that's flaring out pointing out. And we're going to tie this in, flaring out, onto the shank right up against that point where we started clamping down the foam. And to help it out a little bit, and then we're going to wrap around the front and have it sticking out the back. This is a tip that helps you save time and materials on rubber legs. It works pretty good. We're going to shorten the legs a little bit. They don't need to be too long. And then here's a way I found to get this out of the way, is if you double this back over the back of the fly, it can stay out of your way until you are pretty much done with it. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to take a little bit of that olive deer hair, and we're going to tie it in. You only need a little bit here. And we're going to tie a little bit of this in, and I'm going to actually move this forward. I'll move that behind after I do the wing, actually. So we're going to measure first. You know, the fly's going to be trimmed down too on the tail end, so that's about good. You want it to be just about past the end. And we're going to kind of cinch this in and kind of cut through these and wiggle our way forward like this. Now once you get all the way up, back to where you started, then we can move these legs back over the hair, and then we can trim off all of this excess right in here. So what we're going to do is trim all this off right here. And there's a bunch of extra, so all these little stragglers, I might not get them all just for the sake of keeping the video moving, but you can be very precise with yours. And now what we're going to do for the tail end is we're going to put just a little bit more of this dubbing up front and then wrap the hackle forward and we're done. This will work as a great dropper in the fall. That's a really popular way that I like to fish hoppers in the fall is with a dropper, especially if you're in the driftless. Now the driftless, to my knowledge, does not have squalas. The driftless has a lot of grasshoppers, and this is the kind of thing that you want there in the fall when it's just, loaded with grasshoppers. So, it's a fly that kind of can work all over the place. The East Coast gets hoppers, West Coast gets hoppers, middle of the country, the Midwest gets hoppers. So the hopper part of this fly can work all over the place. The Skwala is pretty, isolated to the west, but it, like I said, it's kind of a dual use fly. So we're going to kind of do this to spread the legs a little bit. And now we need to wrap this hackle forward. So just a couple of wraps you need to bring to the front, just to help with a little bit of buoyancy towards the front. And a couple of wraps will keep this nice and secured so it doesn't come undone on you. And we'll trim this off right here, as close as we can. Precise cut. And then now, the kind of tricky part, if you've never done this, this actually helps reinforce these hackle right here. You're going to kind of cut through all of these hackle fibers right here till you get back to the hair. And then that's how we're going to pull this back over itself for the head. Just like that. Pull it tight. This foam's amazing. I'm just cranking on this stuff and it is just not splitting. Other foam totally would have split by now. When you're doing this, you need to watch out for these legs. It's one thing that I just kind of screwed up here. You do not want to pinch that leg down. But now we're going to whip finish and we can kind of even up these legs and pull them. I got my whip finishing tool. So one thing I screwed off. Whip finish here and trim it up and we'll be done. Couple whip finishes here, because I don't like to use resin where there's hackle. So to be safe, I will just do a couple of whip finishes to make sure I don't have a problem here. Again, watch those legs. And then we can kind of wiggle them back into place if they got smashed down. Right here, I'm going to trim this down like this. And take each corner off if you'd like. And then you can kind of pull these legs and get them where you want them to be. And then, of course, we can shorten them up a little bit because they're a little long. And then for this end bit right here, we'll trim it down and take a corner off each one. Now you've got your Skwopper and you're ready for spring fishing, whether you're on the West Coast here or you want to keep this one in your box till fall. It's got a use just about all summer trout season. If you'd like, you can give them little eyes. You don't need to. But yeah, this is a Skwopper. You can get all this stuff at caddisflyshop.com. There's a full write-up on OregonFlyFishingBlog.com. I will try to list more of the rivers where squallas are a big deal, but this is a killer fly. Works great as a dropper in the fall too, or a foam for your dropper in the fall. Thanks.